Hey there, my lovely calamities. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into episode 7 of season 2, and boy, do I have some thoughts to share about it. We are almost at the end of the season. There is one more episode left. I do hope that we get a season 3, fingers crossed, but before we jump in, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss any of the new content I upload on the channel. I must admit, while many people had their theories about Maud Beaton, I never once considered the possibility of her being a 19th century scammer. In my innocent heart, I had not even entertained the thought of adding Maud Beaton as a 19th century scammer to my Gilded Age bingo card. Surprisingly, I had suspected Oscar to be the one pulling off the scam, cunningly maneuvering his way into her fake fortune. On a side note, if I had a bingo card for this captivating show, it would undoubtedly feature squares for dinner service drama, Aunt Agnes invents a withering colloquialism for poor people, a butler saves the day, and Armstrong's racially insensitive remarks spoiled an otherwise pleasant moment between the servants. In this penultimate episode of season 2, we witnessed a series of monumental events that left us reeling. From Oscar Van Ryan's ultimate downfall at the hands of Maud, to Aunt Agnes discovering the theft of her family fortune in the grand opening of the iconic Brooklyn Bridge. It was a whirlwind of emotions. However, the most heart-wrenching moment was undoubtedly the tragic demise of Reverend Forte. Though his time with us was short, his absence will be deeply felt for years to come. Just when we thought George Russell was transforming into a more compassionate and benevolent figure, he shattered our illusions. Last week, he showed mercy by preventing his steel workers from being shot. But now we learn that his kindness was merely a facade. Still, can't deny he's hot and rich, like George confides in his trusted ally, Clay, revealing that the concessions and meager raise he granted the striking men were only temporary. He cunningly explains that by the time the contract expires, animosity will have brewed between the craftsmen and laborers, as well as towards the Catholic immigrants and Jews. Shocking, right? George's plan is to revert back to the old ways, where the working class remains subservient to the wealthy elite, while other affluent bosses despise George for his concessions. He argues that it was a strategic move to maintain public sympathy. By throwing mere scraps at the laborers, he hopes to maintain a favorable image. Marian's situation is quite unfortunate as she is still engaged to cousin Dashiell. However, there is a silver lining to this cloud. During her engagement party, Reverend Forte, aka Uncle Luke, suddenly collapses, diverting everyone's attention away from Marian. This comes as a relief after Aunt Agnes's desperate attempt to rush the wedding. Luke's appearance is quite alarming, with dark circles under his eyes that are reminiscent of a character nearing their final episode on TV. Following his collapse, Agnes insists on turning her home into a hospice where she and Ada will take care of him moving forward. Agnes seizes this opportunity to reveal her rarely seen tender side as she sits beside Luke, acknowledging the profound impact he has had on her sister's life. You have given her a taste of happiness she never knew existed. You have truly changed her life, she tells the dying Forte. Bertha Russell, who has been dominating the opera scene lately with an English duke as her esteemed guest for the Met's opening night, is taken aback when Mrs. Astor finally extends an invitation for her to have a box at the Academy. Leicester is well aware of Bertha's success and sees the box as her Achilles heel. While Bertha considers the offer, George, her husband, believes it to be a bad idea. He knows that Mrs. Astor is attempting to bribe Bertha, just as he has done with his steelworkers. Henderson, the mill's head, is aware of this and subtly warns George that he won't let it divide the workers. Oscar, who hasn't crossed paths with George Russell since George bluntly advised him to stay away from Gladys's love life, approaches his neighbor with the intention of apologizing for the uncomfortable situation. You see, Oscar has invested his family fortune in a new business venture called the Casterbridge Pacific Railroad, which happened to bid against George's company for a new railway project. Russell, wearing his best Mariah Carey "I don't know her" expression, dismisses Oscar's endeavor, claiming that if he hasn't heard of Casterbridge Pacific, then it must not be of any significance, since he prides himself on knowing every major player in his industry. And that's when Oscar's world starts to crumble. He visits the office where he once met Maud Beaton and invested his money, only to find it deserted. He then goes to Maud's supposed residence, but discovers that she has never lived there. It turns out that she has been deceiving him, as well as the entire New York society. Maud is not the illegitimate daughter of Jay Gould, but merely a scammer with an extravagant parasol. The only person Oscar can confide in about this devastating situation is his ex, John Adams, and during their meeting, he completely breaks down. "Oh God, John, I've destroyed everything," he sobs. At a charity tea organized by Aurora Fane, Mrs. Astor makes a grand announcement that Bertha should come and inspect her new box at the academy. However, Bertha calmly explains that she has lost interest in the academy and no longer wishes to be associated with it. Mrs. Astor, in her usual loud manner, scalds Bertha, claiming that she is making a fool of herself. Little did anyone suspect that Larry Russell had such a progressive mindset. Following his recent encounter with Emily Roebling, the brilliant engineer and wife of Washington Roebling, the chief engineer of the Brooklyn Bridge, Larry discovered that Emily had been the driving force behind the bridge's construction for years. Fueled by determination to give credit where it's due, Larry sets out to ensure that Emily receives the recognition she deserves. However, Mr. Tate, the bridge's primary trustee, is less than enthusiastic about revealing the extent of Emily's contributions. Worried that it may cast doubt on the bridge's quality, he opposes Larry's plans. Nevertheless, at the grand opening ceremony, attended by the entire city, Larry takes matters into his own hands. In a surprising twist, he publicly reveals Emily as the true engineer, leaving everyone in awe. Emily herself is deeply appreciative of the acknowledgement, just as she was in real life when Congressman Abram Hewitt delivered a similar speech at the bridge's opening. This episode is packed with both feminism and integration, making it a truly captivating story. In Brooklyn, Peggy has been actively involved in the fight to keep the black schools open. After much discussion, they realize that the best way to achieve this is by recruiting white teachers who can then persuade white parents to send their children to integrated schools. However, the only white individuals they can entice to work in the black schools are immigrants like the Irish, who themselves face persecution upon their arrival in the country. Amidst all of this, Peggy finds herself grappling with her feelings for Thomas Fortune, her married boss whom she has a crush on. Her mother, being perceptive, understands the situation, and instead of forbidding Peggy from pursuing her feelings, she simply reminds her, "I raised you better than that." While the entire city is celebrating the grand opening of the Brooklyn Bridge, Uncle Luke is nearing the end of his life. Ada, his niece, reassures him that it's okay for him to let go. As she lies down beside him in bed, fireworks illuminate the sky outside, captivating the crowds who marvel at the world's newest wonder. In the midst of this spectacle, Uncle Luke peacefully passes away in his sleep. Despite their differences throughout the season, it is Agnes who stands by her sister's side, providing comfort and support during this time of grief. Agnes couldn't shake off thoughts of Ada from her mind, but just when she least expected it, Oscar made his appearance after being absent from the Van Rhijn household. With a heavy heart, he disclosed his devastating news to his mother, Agnes. "I made a grave error," Oscar confessed. He paused for a moment before continuing, "and unfortunately, Mother, you are involved in my mistake." In that instant, the harsh reality struck. Oscar hadn't only squandered his own wealth, but the entire Van Rhijn fortune had slipped through his fingers. Exciting news emerges from the Van Rhijn household downstairs. The Bannister has extended an invitation to his friend Mr. Schubert, the secretary of the New York City Watchmakers Association, to examine Jack Trotter's innovative clock invention. Mr. Schubert is thoroughly impressed by the new mechanism and expedites Jack's membership to the esteemed Watchmakers Society. This means that the patent office will now officially review Jack's application. Hooray for the world of horology! In a similar vein, the staff across the street receives wonderful news. Flora Watson's daughter finally arrives at Shadow Russell to resolve the entire West Coast situation on behalf of her father. It turns out that her husband had proposed the idea of moving to San Francisco without her knowledge. Flora not only informs Watson that she doesn't want him to leave New York, but also expresses her desire for him to remain a part of her life. She suggests that he can have his own apartment, spend time with his grandchildren, and be a retired banker called Collier, just the way you are. "I finally get to have a life," he exclaims to Church and the rest of the Russell staff. Hooray for perfect harmony! I was completely blown away by this episode, especially the scene between Agnes and Reverend Forte. I couldn't help but shed tears when he passed away, and even more when Larry revealed that a woman was behind the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. The opera house and school drama didn't really capture my attention, but the preview for the final episode has me intrigued. I'm dying to know who scammed them. Could it be the school board or the Irish teacher? So many unanswered questions and so little time left. I really hope there's a season 3. Oh, and I'm rooting for Marian to call off the wedding and be with Larry. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's episode. Until next time, take care of yourself.